I didn't cry when my brother made the announcement. It wasn't that I wasn't grieving. It just felt like something else had already taken over the room, something practical, pre-decided, like we had all been invited not just to say goodbye to my father, but to watch what would happen next. We were still standing near the front, people shifting in quiet clusters when Daniel cleared his throat. "I'll keep this brief," he said, like he was opening a meeting. A few heads turned. Some didn't. Funerals blur into routine for most people unless it's their loss. "I've decided to sell the house," he continued. "There's debt, a significant amount, about 340,000. He didn't say gambling, not at first, but the word settled anyway, unspoken and fully understood. I looked at my mother. She didn't look at me. "Your dad would understand," she said, almost gently. "We can't carry everything, and your sister—" She paused, finally glancing in my direction. "You can find another place. You've always been independent." Independent. It landed like a compliment shaped as permission. I didn't respond. Not because I agreed, but because something about the way this was unfolding felt finished. Like my reaction had already been accounted for and filed away as irrelevant. The house wasn't just a house. It was where I had stayed after my divorce, where I moved back quietly, without asking for much. My father never made it feel temporary, even when we didn't talk about it directly. He wasn't expressive, not in the way people write speeches about, but he paid attention to small things, structural things. I remember once, years ago, he asked me if I kept copies of important documents. I laughed it off, said I barely kept track of my own keys. He didn't laugh, just nodded like he had confirmed something. At the time, it meant nothing. Now, standing there while my life was being rearranged in polite tones, it came back with a weight I couldn't explain. There was a kind of stillness after my mother spoke. Not silence exactly, people shifting, someone coughing, but the decision had already settled in the room. Then a chair moved, not loudly. Just enough to break the rhythm. Mr. Hale, my father's lawyer, stood up from the second row. He wasn't someone most people noticed unless they needed to. He had that kind of presence, precise, contained. "Actually," he said, adjusting his jacket, "there's a document from 2009 that needs to be addressed before any decisions are made." Daniel frowned slightly. "We've already gone through the will. This isn't part of the estate," Mr. Hale replied. His tone didn't rise. It didn't need to. Something shifted then. Not emotionally, structurally. Like the floor had tilted just enough for everyone to feel it. "The house," he continued, "was transferred into a separate living trust 17 years ago. I felt it before I fully understood it, a small, controlled unraveling of everything that had just been assumed. It is not subject to liquidation for personal debts," he added, "and it is not jointly owned." Daniel blinked once. "What does that mean?" Mr. Hale turned slightly, not toward him, toward me. "It means," he said, "your father designated the property solely to your sister." No one spoke. There wasn't a dramatic reaction. No one gasped. It was quieter than that, more uncomfortable. My mother's expression didn't change right away, but something in her posture did, like she had lost track of where to stand. "That can't be right," Daniel said, a little too quickly. "Why wouldn't he tell us?" Mr. Hale didn't answer immediately. He reached into his folder and removed a thin set of papers. He believed clarity wasn't always effective in preventing conflict, he said, so he chose certainty instead. That sounded like him, not emotional, not confrontational, just deliberate. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't even feel relieved, not in the way I expected. What I felt was a strange alignment of past and present. Like a question I didn't know I had just got answered, all those small moments, the quiet observations, the lack of discussion that I once mistook for distance. It hadn't been distance, it had been preparation. Daniel said something else, about fairness, about not being informed, but his words didn't land the same way anymore. They sounded like they were still operating under a version of reality that had already ended. My mother finally looked at me properly. There was no apology in her expression, but there was something else, not quite regret, more like recalibration, as if she was seeing me not differently but more accurately, and maybe realizing she hadn't before. People began to leave not long after. The room loosened, conversations resumed in low tones, but nothing returned to what it had been. Mr. Hale handed me the documents without ceremony. "Your father was very clear," he said. "He didn't want this to become a point of negotiation." I nodded. That made sense too. Outside, the air felt sharper than it should have. Daniel didn't come up to me, not immediately. Maybe he didn't know how. Maybe he was still trying to find a version of this where things worked in his favor. My mother lingered, then walked past me with a brief touch on my arm. Light, uncertain. "We'll talk," she said. "Not I'm sorry." Just that. I watched her go. The house was still mine. That was real. Solid in a way nothing else in the day had been. But something else had shifted too. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough. Enough to understand that what my father protected wasn't just a place to live. It was a line. And now I could see exactly where it had always been drawn.